Welcome back, everyone. So a very, very controversial and somewhat interesting subject this afternoon. It's one that I'm looking forward to. It's discussing with Danny from Spain, one of our regular guests, and also Ruan, who is a former Met police officer and our resident self-proclaimed Prosecco socialist. So a natural enemy, if you like, of the man that we're going to talk about today, and I'm particularly looking forward to speaking to Ruan about, and that is Tommy Robinson. So, Ruan, first question to you. The question that I've got on my mind, why do the government and the authorities fear one single man as much as they appear to do?
I'm not sure if the government fears one single person. I mean, Tommy.
Let me just say. Let me just come in there. When you say that, straight away, I've got to come back to you with his name was mentioned in the House the other week by the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. I would say that's government's caring, because I don't remember the last time they mentioned my name.
Well, Tommy Robinson is certainly what we would call a folk devil. He's been created into a folk devil. So he's someone who is very, very easy to, well, he courts popularity. So he himself is putting him himself into a position to get a response. And of course, that's part of his raison d'etre. But I don't think there's the fear factor there that some people may think. What's happened recently was certainly the day of St. George's Day, the day he was found, not guilty. It was thrown out.
Thrown out, yeah.
Yeah, his case was thrown out, and rightly so. Rightly so. If the police did not operate as they should have done, then it should never have even got to court.
I would suggest, Danny, that on that particular day, having reviewed the footage myself time and time again and very carefully, that not only did the police act unlawfully, unfairly, not only did they not keep the law, not only did they break their oath that day, that they assaulted him with a pepper spray.
Yeah.
Whilst the man was
in handcuffs.
In handcuffs, where he was clearly and very evidently already heavily restrained, surrounded by, I think I counted 37 police officers.
Yeah, I was going to say 25. Yeah, maybe more than.
So
he wasn't posing a threat that he was going to leg it, was he? In handcuffs, surrounded by, as you said, if you counted them, then 30 odd police officers. He wasn't really going anywhere, was he?
To me, Ruan, that is someone that the police fear, or they've got it in for him.
When it comes to policing, there is, believe it or not, there isn't a collective conspiracy theory. Officers operate fairly independently. He is a high-profile person. I think it was rather foolish, the amount of policing that he had to experience that day when he was arrested. Now, once someone's arrested, they will be handcuffed, which, of course, in itself is an assault, just being put in handcuffs. The then use of pepper spray, if he's simply not of any threat, is inappropriate. In fact, the use of any further force is not appropriate.
Well, on that subject, did the officer that done the pepper spray, was he suspended, or was there any type of investigation into his actions at the time against Tommy?
Not yet, but from what I believe, I think there's going to be further legal action, and rightly
but
so.
But Paul, that will come from Tommy's side, won't it? There should be an independent report in what happened, independent inquest in what happened to Tommy via the police service themselves. It shouldn't have to be sued from a third party to do that if it was considered inadequate. I mean, that Channel 4 documentary recently, Paul, where it was Catching a Bad Cop or whatever it was called, I can't remember exactly. But there was an incident where a young lady who had mental health issues that was threatening to jump off of a bridge. She was treated very rough, very unfair. And then they pepper sprayed her really close to her face. I mean, that looked like within a couple of inches, and then put a spit mask across her. I mean, you know, on the way home, they were saying, oh, should we get a curry? Is it now a good time to get a curry? Oh, there's never a bad time to get a... You know, this poor woman was subject to all of that. But then there was an independent review on it because it was caught on body cam. Why wasn't that done with Tommy? Why wasn't that done?
Go on.
Oh, sorry.
Go
I
on,
was
man.
going to say I don't understand why when the police are dealing with such a high-profile person and they've clearly got it wrong. I'm surprised the Met hasn't actually gone to the Independent Office of Police Conduct and
Exactly
actually
that.
asked for an investigation,
Yeah, exactly that. And why haven't
because
they?
that would
Well,
make sense
the
to do
answer
that.
to me is very simple. It's because it's Tommy Robinson. If it was anyone else, I mean, if that was a person of colour who was campaigning for, say, it was someone from BLM, the whole world would be on fire right now. So we'd have national newspapers front page. We'd have the BBC wetting their beds. But because it's Tommy Robinson, it's assault, and the legal arrest is it's absolutely fine.
I can assure you at this moment in time, if it happened to a person, highly unlikely it would happen that way you've just said. Highly unlikely. We're in a different political arena at this moment. The lack of interest is very noticeable at this moment. The government has no desire with regard to these issues. It doesn't want to investigate things.
Is he going away, Ruan?
Sorry, is Tommy Robinson going away?
Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope not.
No, I mean, is he going away as a public figure? Is he going away?
No, I would say he's on the growth again.
I would say.
He was on the decline, but he's a very, very good self-publicist. He's really, really good. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of his. In fact, I don't agree with the majority of his opinions. But he is someone who he could be such a positive voice. He's clearly got huge ability. And it really is sad that his skills are in the negative and they could be in the positive.
Can I pull you up on that? You say that you disagree with most of what he says. Let's talk about what I see that he talks about. And I've studied the man very carefully. He's very much anti-grooming gang. He's very much anti-radical Islam. And I think those are his two main stances in life.
Yeah.
I don't see what there is about either of those things to disagree with. So maybe you could tell me.
Grooming gangs are across the whole spectrum. They're not one community does not have the monopoly on that. They're an abomination that exists in closed communities. So
that doesn't really answer the question, though. What is wrong in highlighting the problem with Asian grooming gangs? What is there not to agree with? Yeah, but you could say at the same time he's not covering car theft. It doesn't really matter.
No. If he's covering grooming gangs, I want him to cover grooming gangs, and the exploitation of young women in this country.
I think he would point out.
I think it is wrong.
Yeah, I think he would. I don't think he racializes it. I think he puts it down to religion and religious beliefs.
Unfortunately, this is where religion and the racialization merge together, because it is specific communities. It's not all Muslims. He is specifically highlighting, so that racializes it in itself.
In fact, I think we could go one step further with that. It's not, when you say it's not all Muslims, it's a very, very small amount of Muslim people. Very, very. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fraction is exactly the word.
Danny, I don't think any of us is denying that or questioning that. The point is that for me, radical Islamists are not a race for a start. They come in all shapes, sizes, and colours. Mm-hmm. So the racial aspect, I can't get. A radical Islamist can be pink or brown or green,
or white,
or white, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't get that. So going back to my question, okay, you've explained that you would like him to talk about all grooming gangs from all religions and races, but what about the other issues that he stands for against, radical Islam, the terrorists, the radicalization? I know Muslims myself that tell me that they have a big problem in their mosques with the youngsters, and the elders are struggling to keep them on the straight and narrow. So what part of that would you also disagree with?
I'm not going to disagree. I'm not here to defend radical Islam or radical Christianity or radical anything. because unfortunately, when people go that far into the abyss, they're blind to everything, and they are a danger to society. That is a severe threat. But we're also getting that on the Christian right as well. There's a radical element there. Unfortunately, there's a radical element in most faiths. I'm from a Buddhist background. There's a radical element within Buddhism that is staunchly anti-Muslim. So
they're not
it
blowing up
happens
buses in London, are they, or blowing
no,
up?
they're doing it in
arenas
other
in
parts. They
Manchester?
do it in other parts of the world. But we had actually, if you look at radicalization, we had. I've mentioned it before. You and I have lived through a period that had far more terrorism than we've got now, and that was with the IRA, etc. Yet we're making what is currently happening. I appreciate it's happening today, but it isn't worse. I'm not saying it's better. It's not. It needs to be dealt with. But we are certainly, society is looking at it in a different way.
I agree. And I think the reason that Tommy would do that, and I can't speak for him, but I think from my viewpoint, and you're right, I grew up with travelling into London. There was a threat of an IRA bomb or a bombing in the 70s and the early 80s, etc. So we both grew up with that threat, and I think you're right, the threat of that happening in London in the 70s was higher than the threat that we have right now. I think the major difference that someone like Tommy Robinson would point out is that this particular threat has a bigger ambition. I never saw the IRA looking to potentially take over the whole of England or the United Kingdom. And, the IRA's aim was to unite Ireland, not to potentially take over the whole of Great Britain. So I think there are two different threats, or certainly a very different perceived threat from Tommy and his supporters. But, look, we've gone off track a little bit. Tell me as an example. I mean, obviously you'd be someone that would not support Tommy, but I'd like you to tell me why people find him racist is a term that you often hear. I've never, ever heard him ever say.
Paul, he's called out many people. He's called out many people on many different shows when he's been branded that word. And he said, give me one example of where I've been racist. And no one, as far as I'm aware, has been able to say, they just say, oh, you just are. And that's not really answering the question, though, is it?
No, that's a childish answer. I mean, do I think that Tommy Robinson in himself is racist? No. Do I think he courts, he plays, dabbles in that arena? Yes, absolutely. The trouble is, it's very much, he himself is not racist necessarily, but he's certainly provoking people. And the response that he gets from some of his fans, cohort of fans, is then it boils over into overt racism.
That's why he left the EDL, because he started to find himself surrounded by people whose views he didn't agree with.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if it's fair that a man is tarred and targeted so often and so heavily because of what other people might do or what other people might think. To me, he seems to be one of the UK's most misunderstood individuals. Now, I'll tell you what I think Tommy Robinson's faults are. I think that he's rough around the edges, a bit like me. I'm rough around the edges. Every now and again, he'll throw in an F-bomb during a speech, which I think could possibly do without. I think he's got a history he's a bit of a football lad. Well, so, we've all been most of us have been, you've been a rugby lad, Ron, right? But we've all been, a lot of work, but that is also his strength. People appreciate that he's just
relate to him, Paul.
Yeah, you can relate to him. He's just an ordinary guy, an ordinary geezer that tells the truth, that tells it what it is, tells it as it is. Now, if the truth is uncomfortable and if people don't like the truth, I get that. But the truth shouldn't become a crime, should it?
When we go back to being a bit of a lad, he was a member of the Luton Mix, which was a known at the time hooligan organisation. It
Do
was
we know that for sure? Do we know that for 100% sure, or is that just another Tommy rumour?
No. He was a prominent member of. He admits himself. But he was a young man then, you know. But young men do all sorts of daft things.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he was a member of a hooligan organisation. But that doesn't mean he has to. I'm not saying he's committing violence at this today. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I think he likes the kudos. He likes being up there in the celebrity status. I say I would love to work with him on something good, because he has that potential. He has the audience. He's very, very articulate. And he has the potential to do some amazingly good things. And I see that in him. And I hope one day he comes to that realization.
Does that mean, though, would that mean, Ruan, him changing his political views? Because I don't think that's ever going to happen.
It's about explaining himself more and not allowing others to misrepresent what he's saying. So what I've said, Tommy himself, I've not found something where he has been overtly racist. No. But lots of his followers I have. And those around him I have. And that's problematic. He is responsible because he is an influencer. So he is actually responsible for how he influences people.
Let me give you, I mean, it's a great point, Ron. I did a live stream the other night and Danny was in it. Danny was in the stream. And actually, it was one that I invited you on, but you didn't see the message. During the stream, one or two people started posting things that I just do not agree with, would never agree with, and they disgust me. I deleted the messages, but those were ones that I saw. I can't honestly feel that when you comment on things, when you become an influencer, we all have I do believe that we all have a responsibility, but we can't be responsible for people
for
out
your
there
followers.
Have got a screw loose or have, and you know, look, I went to the St. George's Day parade last week.
Yes.
I must have shook 300 people's hands. So I met one guy who I wanted to get away from because of what he was saying. I didn't like what he was saying. I didn't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate him thinking that I would agree with him, but his views are not my responsibility.
Yeah, you can't control, Paul, who's going to follow you, can you? You can't control who follows this channel, who likes your channel, who's going to comment on your page. I mean, you can ban them if you see it, but you can't really, and you also can't be held responsible for that. But so we can't also do the same for Tommy, can we?
Oh, and let me tell you as well. Let me tell you guys as well. I've had more than a few emails from people that have sent me messages that I can tell you now. From people that allegedly come from a tolerant background are showing me a lot of tolerance, but I don't hold everyone of their community responsible for what someone else has said to me.
And I totally agree with everything you've just said there. But unfortunately, that very, very liberal approach, which I applaud, is not afforded to, if there's a Islamist attack, then suddenly Muslims in general have to account for it.
I believe, though, Ruan, if you want, and I think, you know, I really do respect your opinion. I think if you listen to Tommy, he has spoken out time and time again about not blaming ordinary, decent Muslims.
Oh, I've heard him numerous times.
You know, I've heard him 100 times.
Yeah.
But I believe he's a man that will not give up against radical Islam. I commend him for that. I will support him for that. I do believe that there are things that he could tidy up on, which leads a question that I want to ask there. I mean, you're more than welcome to say whatever you want, guys. But my final question to Ruan and to Danny would be this. Can Tommy Robinson ever become mainstream?
Sorry, I think he is.
I think he's got enough following to become mainstream. He's got enough media coverage to become mainstream. I spent a bit of time with him recently, Paul, as you know, and we discussed a few bits and bobs, one-to-one, nobody else there. And he even had quite a few Muslim people at his recent wedding. So that surely goes to show that he's not anti-Muslim. He's anti exactly what you're saying.
No, but Danny, how could he become mainstream if the mainstream won't accept him? I mean, I'll give you an example, Rowan, right? Why the hell is a man like Abu Hamza given a platform? And he was given a platform, and Anjam Chowdhury was given a platform on the BBC when Tommy Robinson is just completely persona non grata, ignored, blanked. You know, how can someone be mainstream when the mainstream media won't even give him the chance to have his say?
Because you hit the nail on the head earlier, Paul. They are scared of him.
That's my belief.
Because he's talking sense.
I do not see Tommy Robinson as this racist that some paint him. I see him very much as a populist who is, and I don't mean this a negative, he's playing out a role because that suits his ends, his aims and objectives. I only wish the true Tommy Robinson, one day, I hope the true Tommy Robinson stands up and actually works with others to act in a positive way.
So if he reached out to you today, for an example, what would your first bit of advice be? What would your aim be? What would you like to achieve with him?
I mean, my background as an anti-racist is fairly well catalogued. So that's my background. I would put my hand out anytime and speak with Tommy.
That would make for an interesting discussion. So going back to my question, you say he already is mainstream. Okay, let's rephrase it. Will he ever be accepted?
No, I don't think if he's in his current form, although his views have become mainstream, because they have, in the same way that, and I don't mean this in a positive way, Nigel Farage is probably the most successful politician of the 21st century and the late 20th century. But I don't mean that as a positive. But he is mainstream. His views have become mainstream. Elements within different political parties now, mainstream parties, they are following his policies. So he has become mainstream. Tommy has the ability, a lot of his views have become mainstream in certain areas of the media, etc. If he changed his style, he would be as successful as Nigel Farage in a different way.
Yeah,
because Nigel Farage is not the working man's man.
No, he's not.
He's also been muted on mainstream media, but more and more people now, Paul, are looking to the likes of YouTube for their news. They're not going to the BBC anymore. They're shown so many times to be corrupt and one-sided. You know, all the mainstream media, they are.
Danny, I agree. They are so right-wing, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe not.
Who says I don't give both sides a voice on this channel, eh?
Yeah.
Which is why I will say, because the BBC cheese off Danny and they cheese off me, etc. I hate to say this, I think they're probably more in the middle than we would like them to, than I would care them to believe.
Do you know what, Ron? I'd love to agree with that, but I can't. And I'll tell you for why. Because every time they mention someone like Tommy Robinson, you know what's coming next.
Oh, yeah,
negativity.
And all the time that happens, I can't respect them.
But equally, we do suffer in this country. We spoke about this before when we saw it during the Brexit. This middle class, and this middle class intelligentsia snobbery and putting people down.
Yeah,
and that happened throughout the Brexit discussions, debates, and it happens towards Tommy all the time. Yeah. Now the guy is clearly a very, very intelligent guy who's got many, many skills. I would never ever underestimate him. I wouldn't get involved in a discussion about the intricacies of Islam and aspects of the Quran. I wouldn't, because actually he's read an awful lot, far more than I have on the topic, but he has his own interpretation of it.
That word comes up a lot, doesn't it? Interpretation these days.
Well, that's the thing about faith books, isn't it? They all.
Well, when where the law comes from as well. I mean, the law.
Yes,
You know,
but it's interpretation. Yeah.
how do you interpret a swastika on a rally that involves people from the Jewish faith? I know there's only one way that I could interpret that.
Myself.
And I would agree with you. You know, 'cause my background is my background. So a swastika is a swastika, no matter what the historical pre-1933 imagery of the swastika was. It is now, the swastika is what it is now in a Western perspective. Should it have been on the flag? Of course not. Are there absolute buffoons, idiots on those marches? There is a very small percentage of buffoons and idiots on those marches who want to incite trouble. Yes, but the vast majority of people on those peace marches are there for that reason. They're there for peace.
Just a shame the BBC couldn't have described the people that attended the St George's Day rally last week in such a nice fashion, because we were all described as being from the far right.
I was very saddened by that, because the only image I saw that was repeated everywhere was the kettling bit. So if there was such widespread violence, I would have expected to see more than that. So I suspect there wasn't. But
and you couldn't really call that violence, could you? It was a scuffle. I mean,
it was violence. It was violence from the. For me, it was violence from the police. They started it. They caused it.
Would I expect the police to be around the corner, ready, have all the kit? Yes, I would. That makes sense. But it only needs to be, the fist only needs to be shown when there's actually a fear. That's the
and the police horses was certainly an unnecessary move. And also a little video, a short that I put out the other day, shows a woman probably in her 70s laying on the floor being helped up by two men that probably weren't much younger, after one of the police horses had gone piling in after kettling a group of people. And if you study the video very carefully, what you see is a lot of women on one side and a lot of men on the other. And the reason that was because the girls were sticking together talking, the men were sticking together talking, and the police decided to separate them.
Well, the police are not very good at policing these sorts of things. If you think about going back to the Sarah Everard vigil, and the assaults on women, etc. Following on from that, the HMIC very quickly, HMIC of police, very quickly came out with the police did nothing wrong. Subsequent inquiries have said, you bet there was things wrong. Now, that very following day, I had some police officers in my teaching session, and one of them was a public order expert, tactics advisor, and he said the actions were wrong. So the police knew what they did was wrong. Now, is there going to be the same scrutiny about the St. George's Day parade? I doubt it. Should there be more openness, transparency about things? Well, you know I'm going to say yes. There needs to be more openness. There needs to be far more accountability.
And that's part of the problem, around. I think a lot of ordinary, regular British people, English people that were at that parade, myself included, bearing in mind that my own son-in-law was arrested for nothing more than, well, having a pint in a pub on the Armistice weekend.
Yes, yeah.
When they arrested a pub en masse and released them 8 or 9 hours later without charge. All the time that sort of behaviour is taking part, that is creating divide, division, unnecessary hatred. What we need is some, policing without fear and without favour.
I'm going to agree 100%, because the misuse of things such as kettling, and your son-in-law, that was another form of kettling they did there. It's been abused in the same way as stop and search is abused. These tactics are there to be used proportionately, not just all the time.
Guys, thank you so much. I mean, it's been a great, very interesting conversation. As always, ladies and gents watching, let us know what you think in the comments section. please give me a thumbs up, and a big thanks to Ruan, a big thanks to Danny. I'm just going to finish by saying, Mark Rowley, out you go. I'm sorry, you haven't been doing your job properly.